Hello friends and welcome to Polite English Lesson. When we talk about polite English, what do we actually mean? Do you know that when I say this phrase, polite English, to my native speaking friends, they're like, Anna, what do you mean polite English? Is there impolite English? Is there rude English? And I go, what do you mean you don't understand what polite English is? And then I was like, bingo, of course they don't understand, because for a native speaker, English is just English, right? Polite, rude is just English. But we have this phrase, we have this term, polite English, because we compare English to other languages. For example, if you speak Russian or Ukrainian, then you can compare the way you communicate in your native language and you compare English. And then you can determine whether English is more polite or less polite than your native language. And this is when we use the term polite English. So don't be surprised if you talk to native speakers and they're like, what do you mean polite English? You know, it is true that some languages are less polite than English, because when people communicate using these languages, they are more direct. When you communicate in English, especially when you communicate in business, but not only, I would say generally, right? You are very careful when you, for example, say no, when you reject something, like when you want to request something, right? When you want to ask somebody to do something for you, right? So in different languages, requests, rejections are said in a very different manners. So today, I'm going to teach you the right way, the proper way to use English for requests, for making requests, for saying no, for making statements, for expressing your opinion, etc. Today, I will share with you those cliche phrases, and I will share with you strategies to speak polite English correctly in business environment and also in everyday communication. Because trust me, polite English is not only for business. Polite English for your everyday communication. When teaching people polite English, I like to show this illustration. This illustration is taken from the book How to Be British. Of course, it's comic, and you can see here that the normal person in a situation when they need help, they would just say help, right? But the British and Americans, pretty much the same, they would say like the whole paragraph of, excuse me, I was wondering if you could help me, possibly, kindly, etc., etc. Do you think it's true? It is true. I know a lot of you have this question, Anna, why do I need to remember so many unnecessary words to ask for help? The thing is that you do need to remember them because you are a non-native English speaker. But for native speakers, this is not a problem, right? They were born speaking this language, so they don't see that it's any kind of inconvenience for them to say, excuse me, sir, I was wondering if you could help me, rather than just say one word, help, right? So British and the Americans are pretty much here the same. However, I would say on the level of politeness, the British would be even more polite than Americans. By the way, if you are curious to look through this book, How to Be British, I am sharing this book in the resource bank to this lesson. So go for it. It's really funny. In order to learn how to speak polite English and how to use polite English, you need to know certain strategies. I'm going to share with you 4 polite English strategies. Polite English strategy number 1, use modal verbs. You know, words like can, could, might, should, etc. Let's take a look at my examples here. Order me a coffee, please. This is bad, very wrong. Why? Because it is imperative. You are telling the person what to do. You are ordering them what to do. It's not going to work neither in conversational English nor especially in business context. You know, people will think that you're crazy telling them what to do. So never, ever use the imperative tone when you want to ask somebody to do something for you or when you want to tell somebody to do something. Instead, you can say, would you get me a coffee? Or could you get me a coffee, please? By the way, it's wrong to think that when you say please, you automatically sound more polite. Not in English. Please doesn't help if you say order me coffee. But if you say, would you get me coffee, please? Then it works. Americans say please all the time. By the way, some languages don't use the word please or I'm sorry as much as American English. That is why start using please, I'm sorry, thank you more, and you will sound more polite. Next one, please leave. I have to take this call. Let's say you are in the office and you want to take the call. You don't want anyone to listen to your call, so you don't say please leave. You say, could you step out of the room? I have to take this call. So modal verbs, would and could. Let me show you more examples. Send those documents before the end of the day. Again, you're ordering the person to do something. Not good. Could you send those documents is great. I need to borrow your pen for a moment. Again, you are just like not even asking. You are making this blunt statement. Not good. May I borrow your pen for a moment? By the way, did you know the difference between can I borrow your pen and may I borrow your pen? Did you know that can I borrow your pen is grammatically incorrect, not correct? Because only may is used when you're talking about permission. When you ask for permission, you say, may I do this, not can I do it. Can is for ability. However, in slang, in conversational English, can I borrow your pen is used quite a lot, but it's not grammatically correct, right? So especially in business communication, and when we're talking about proper English, may I borrow your pen is the phrase that you want to use. So let's take a look at the list of modal verbs that you need to use when you want to speak polite English. Can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would. Why I am giving you pairs here? The reason why I'm giving you pairs is to show you that some of these modal verbs are more polite than the others. So modal verbs in the past form, which is the second, could, might, should, would, are always more polite. You know why? Because past tense is the tense of polite English. And this brings me to strategy number 2. Use proper grammar to sound more polite, present or past. I already answered the question, right? So use past tense, past forms of the verbs to sound more polite. You can also use present, but use present continuous. Present continuous is more polite than present simple. I will show you what I mean because it may be a little bit hard to understand what I'm talking about. Present continuous, past simple, so on and so forth. So if I go back for a minute to modal verbs here, when you say, can we do this or could we do this? Could is automatically more polite than can. So if you are communicating with the people you don't know well or business situation, use could, use might, use should, use would. Forget about will, may, shall, or can. By the way, shall is also polite. Shall is used as a modal verb, not the future form. You know what I mean? Shall is used as a polite form of let's. For example, when you say, let's start the meeting, it's a very casual phrase. But when you say, shall we start the meeting, this is a polite phrase. So put it down in your notebooks. I hope you have your notebooks open with a pen. You're writing down everything you can hear now from me. I hope you're doing this. It's very important that you take notes of some important information that I'm mentioning here. So what I want you to put down in your notebooks right now, let's equals shall we. Let's start the meeting. Shall we start the meeting, right? Let's dance. Shall we dance? This is for some casual context here. Alrighty, so strategy number 2, we said present or past. Let me show you how it works finally. Do you have time to meet tomorrow to discuss this? It's an okay sentence, yeah? It's a very casual English. It's a very casual interpretation here. If you want to sound more polite, if you're speaking with an important client, you don't want to say, do you have time to meet tomorrow? Nobody does that. Stop doing this. If you are writing an email and you want a meeting with a client, with a potential client, don't say, do you have time? Say, I wondered if you had time, or I am wondering if you have time, or I was wondering if you have time, okay? This is important to remember. And I want you to notice my useful language here. I wondered, past. I'm wondering, present continuous. I was wondering, past continuous. So technically, past simple, present continuous, and past continuous would be polite forms of English. So instead of saying I wonder, say I wondered. Instead of saying I wonder, say I am wondering, right? And you will sound more polite. Moving on to the next example. What is your name? What is your name is a direct question. What's wrong with a direct question? The problem is that direct questions might sound pushy. If you don't want to sound pushy, make them indirect and use past forms. What did you say your name was, right? This is a very nice way. If you forgot the person's name, what did you say your name was, right? Remember about the intonation. Your intonation should be proper, enthusiastic, and curious as well. Next, I would like to finish this meeting by 4 p.m. It's very direct, yeah? And again, it sounds like authoritative, sounds like you're a strict boss. If you don't want to sound like that, say, I was hoping to finish this meeting by 4. By the way, notice again, past continuous form. I was hoping. I was hoping sounds more polite than I hope. So next time you want to say, I hope to see you soon, say, I was hoping to see you soon, or I was hoping you could help me. You see? So instead of saying, I hope you can help me, say, I was hoping you could help me. So try to switch your mind, yeah, to the past when you're talking about polite English, right? When you are communicating in business. And again, it's very important to remember that you need this information not only to sound more polite, but also you need this information to understand native speakers better. Because if you are speaking with a native speaker and they say, I was hoping you could help me, they are not talking about the past, man. They're not talking about the past. They are talking about present or future. But if you don't know this interesting fact about polite English, you might think that they are talking about the past. And you might not take any actions, and they will be like, why isn't this person doing anything? I asked them to help me, and they're not doing anything. So it's equally important to sound polite and to understand polite English so that you can respond properly and you don't end up in a misunderstanding here. Another 2 examples about, again, past forms and how grammar helps us to sound more polite. Can I ask a question about the agenda? Direct question. I wanted to ask about the agenda. Again, this is not even a question. This is indirect statement, but it's more polite. I think you need help with the deadline. I thought you might like some help with the deadline. You see, I'm using here both indirect statement, modal verb, and I'm also using the past form here. So this sentence is super polite. I thought you might like some help. Let's move to strategy number 3 here. Strategy number 3 is using vague language. What is vague language? Vague means not clear, and vague language is represented by such words: a bit, around, kind of, ish, a few, quite, slightly, a little. Actually, not all of them are words. Ish is a suffix, and ish is a suffix that you typically add to numbers and adjectives. I will talk more about this in a minute. Let's take a look at my first example here. I would like you to spend around 4 hours to get this project completed. So when you say around 4 hours, you actually mean 4 hours, but you say around 4 hours to make it less much. Yeah. So you kind of say it to make it look like it's less than 4 hours, but it's going to be 4 hours and maybe even more. Moreover, this is not the only sentence that you say in this sentence. You continue with, if you can't complete it by then, let's talk so we can make necessary changes. What's here? You are explaining, you are giving more information. Why? Because native speakers always give more information, always explain what they just said just to make you feel better, especially when you're talking about something negative. Let's say 4 hours, that's a lot of like work here. And you need to explain, or you need maybe to suggest a solution if something goes wrong. So this is a very useful tip. I would say this is a life hack from me. Every time you are talking about something that may cause an issue, that may not be very like, that another person may not like, explain why you said that, why you need it, and what can be done if it's not going to work exactly the way you want it or they want it. So always have the question why you said it and say it, actually. That will help. Native speakers do it all the time. Next one. Why don't you come to my office at 2-ish? At 2-ish means around 2 for a quick meeting. So let's first talk about the phrase, why don't you? Why don't you? It's a polite way to suggest something. So instead of saying, could you come to my office? You can say, why don't you come to my office? Number 2, 2-ish. Like I said, ish is a suffix that shows around, not precise, right? When you use it when you talk about time. Let's say you want to meet me tomorrow, but you're not certain what time exactly. Approximately, you want to meet at 7. So you say, Anna, let's meet 7-ish. It means that I can come, or you can come earlier, or like 7:10, a little bit later. Okay. So another way to use the suffix ish is when you use adjectives, like colors, for example. Let's say my phone cover is what? Pinkish, maybe bluish, whatever. So when the color is not clear, you would say like bluish or pinkish, etc. Technically, you can add this suffix to other adjectives. The thing is here that this is a suffix of conversational English, so it's not formal. So if you need to write a formal paper or a formal email, don't use it. Next example, it's not quite what I had in mind. What if we made a few changes? That's very interesting. It's not quite what I had in mind. What does it mean? It means that this is completely wrong. This is completely wrong. And this is when you need to understand what is being said to you. Because a lot of times when people hear such phrases, they don't understand that something is completely wrong, because native speakers never say it in your face. This is wrong, or you're wrong, or your design sucks, or your design is really bad, or your code sucks, or something like that. Instead, they say, it's not quite. But you should know, it's not quite means it's wrong. And this is the time for you to face it and deal with it. What if is a nice phrase to use when you want to suggest a solution. Yeah, when you want to suggest an idea. So that's what you say. Next one, that estimate is a bit high. When people say a bit, it means very in polite English. I mean, in normal English, it means very. In polite English, it means a bit, especially when you talk about information that the other person does not really want to hear. Like, let's say you want a private lesson from me, and I say, well, a private lesson with me is $100, and you're like, well, it's a bit high. You think it's very high. I would agree with you, but I would also tell you that the result that you're going to get even after 1 hour of English coaching with me is going to pay you off quite soon. So think about it. Anyway, so the estimate is a bit high, means very high. Polite strategy number 4, use negative questions. You know, when you say, don't you think we should do this? Or haven't we met before? Or don't you agree to this? Strangely enough, such negative questions are considered very polite in the English language. And you can use negative questions not only as questions, but you can use them when you want to give advice, when you want to make a recommendation, when you want to express your opinion, when you want to ask a question. Let's take a look at some examples that I have prepared for you here. We need to review these documents one more time, right? So here you are basically making a recommendation. Don't you think we should review these figures? You know, in some languages, This structure like of negative question may sound not really polite. For example, I think in Russian it doesn't really sound polite. Like we don't say that. It may even sound a bit rude, you know? But in English, it's okay to say, don't you think we should review these figures? Yes, we've met before. I met you at the conference. Haven't we met before? That's actually a perfect conversation starter. By the way, using negative questions is a perfect way to start a conversation, to start making small talk. We will talk about small talk later on in our next modules, but I can already tell you that using negative questions is a good way to strike up a conversation when you're trying to make small talk. Next one, you must consider how client might respond. Again, this is your recommendation or advice. Don't be so pushy and direct. Say, shouldn't we consider how the client might respond? By the way, notice how I used might here. Might is a modal verb, and I used it specifically here to be more polite again. Those were 4 strategies to sound more polite in English. However, this is not all I have to share with you. I want to tell you how to say no in English correctly and how to reject, let's say, an offer, how to deny something. It is very important to know how to say no and how to hear the no from other people, because in English they do it really differently than you might do it in your language. So saying no, denying something, or giving bad news or disagreeing. When it comes to negativity, native English speakers are really, really positive. So their mentality works the way that they try to make every negative a positive. Or, you know this expression, silver lining. They are looking for a silver lining in every cloud, right? There, you know this phrase, every cloud has a silver lining, right? But not every nationality, not every language is like this. So we need to learn from them. And I think we can adapt it to our own culture of communication and to be less negative. For example, if you are negative, you can become less negative. Anyway, native speakers never say no directly unless they are angry, unless they are bad communicators, unless they are very rude, you know? So if you say no directly, you will most likely come across as a rude person, as an angry person, as a, I don't know, bad communicator, technically. Instead of saying no, you say things like, I'm not sure, or I would love to, but, or unfortunately, I can't, or I'm afraid I can't, or I'm sorry to say this, but I can't. So never say no directly. You always have to sugarcoat it a little bit. That's another good phrase for you. To sugarcoat it means to make it nicer than it actually is. So let's take a look at my examples here. I would love to, but I have to work late that night. Unfortunately, he isn't available. I'm afraid we can't change the date of the meeting next week. I'm sorry to say that your proposal hasn't been approved. So you see, you need to apologize even you didn't do anything bad. You need to say, I'm afraid, as a polite way to say no. Technically, I always say I'm afraid when I want to say no. This is just my habit now, you know, because I learned it. Unfortunately, is another good way because like you show your feelings, yeah? You show that you understand that this information may be bad or negative, or this may be bad news to the person you're speaking with. So technically, never say no in their face directly. Sugarcoat it with phrases like, I would love to, but unfortunately, I'm afraid, I'm sorry to say this, or I'm sorry I can't. And the next step to do is explain to your companion, whatever, opponent, why you said that. Again, this is the way to communicate negative information, bad news, or a rejection. Let's say if I asked you to create a website for me for free. Of course, you know, of course you don't want to do this, right? And what do you say? But you didn't say, oh, no, I can't. No, you don't say that. It's like, you can say, I would love to, Anna, but I work overtime on my project now. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I don't have enough time for this. But I know a guy who may have more time and can help you. You see? So instead of just saying no to me, you are helping me, right? You cannot guarantee. You don't need to worry about what's going to happen with this guy. You don't guarantee anything. You are just being nice and offering a solution to my problem. I will be very thankful and I will appreciate it. And this is what native speakers do, actually. And one more thing, the phrase, I am not sure. This is a very typical trick here. When you ask a native speaker to do something and they say, I'm not sure, or when you just ask for their opinion and they say, I'm not sure, it means no. No, I can't. No, it's bad, and so on. For example, if you are a graphic designer or UI UX designer, you designed a website and you showed your design to a client and your client says, I'm not sure about this design, it means that it's really bad. He doesn't like it, but he's not going to tell you, I don't like it. So you have to read between the lines. And you have to be very careful here, because once my student told me a story that their colleague got into a really bad situation when a client sent her such a response to the design project and she didn't do anything. And the client stopped the project with this company because the designer thought that he needed more time to make a decision whether he likes the design or not. But he didn't like it, but they did not, the team could not understand, I'm not sure about this. They thought he needs more time to think about it. So that's a good lesson to learn. All right, I have shared enough about polite English. Let's recap and let me give you some tips for improvement. Number one, to sound more polite, use more of thank you, please, sorry. Use them as much as possible. Be more positive. Stay more positive. You know, positivity makes you sound more polite as well. Because if you are always complaining or not happy about something, focusing on the negativity, you sound, boring. People don't want to talk to you, and it's rude as well. And also remember, if you are focused on negativity, you will talk about no, 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 no all the time. And you need to know how to say no properly and how to give bad news properly, okay? So stay on the positive side more. Don't finger point. When you talk to someone and let's say you need to give them feedback and this feedback is some bad news or this feedback is negative feedback, don't point fingers like you did it wrong. You can say there is a problem here, right? So don't point exactly who did something wrong. Talk about the problem, not about the person. That's the key. Avoid negative words. Like I said, no, never, I don't know, it's not gonna work, etc. Just avoid saying no and not as much as you can, right? Try to, even the negative phrase, try to turn it into a positive one. And be wordy. Be wordy, this is just to say more. Remember when I mentioned earlier that you should explain why you think so or why you said that, just to give the person more information, especially when you're talking about some unwanted activity or maybe bad news, etc. Or when you are saying no to someone, this is always a good idea. So always have the question why in your head, and even before they ask you why you said that or why you think so, you can start answering the question right away because this question is in your head. This is the way native speakers communicate. So if you want to sound like a native speaker, you should follow these strategies. You should follow these strategies of polite English, and you should follow these strategies of polite way of communication. Then you will become an effective communicator, regardless whether you need to communicate for work or for pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you're ready to get down to practicing. Meanwhile, if you want to learn more about English, polite English, and other English tips, follow these hashtags on Instagram, and whenever you're bored and you want to learn something new, just Google them and read an interesting post and learn something new from me and from English for IT team. You know I'm a big Instagram person, so I am inviting you to share your progress on Instagram while you're taking the course. You can make a story, tag me, I will be happy to repost it and make you famous as well.